Chapter 1. The Road Through the Mountains. The wind that swept through the northern ridge carried the scent of pine and early winter. Elias Thorne, a young cartographer with a heavy leather pack on his shoulder, tightened his scarf and continued along the narrow, winding road carved into the mountain. He had been traveling for 3 days, following directions scribbled in an old notebook he inherited from his grandfather. On the final page, a line was written: "Find the village where the lanterns never go out." Elias had always assumed it was nothing more than a family myth, a bedtime story told to children. But after his grandfather's passing, he found the notebook hidden underneath loose floorboards, along with maps of places that didn't appear on any official chart. One particular map pointed him toward the northern peaks, and toward a small dot labeled Valwind Village. No roads led to it, no traders spoke of it, no king claimed it. But Elias was stubborn and endlessly curious, so he took his pack, his tools, and his grandfather's notebook and went searching. The air grew colder as he climbed higher, but he kept walking. The sun was sinking between the peaks, casting long shadows across the valley below. Somewhere far beneath him, water rushed through a narrow riverbed, echoing softly through the mountains. And then, just as he rounded a bend in the path, he saw it, a cluster of wooden houses, each with warm golden lanterns hanging from their porches, glowing softly in the early dusk. Smoke drifted lazily from chimneys. Snow dusted the rooftops like powdered sugar. Elias blinked. A village, right there. A village that, according to every map he'd ever seen, shouldn't exist. He took a breath, tightened his pack, and followed the stony path down toward the sleepy mountain village. Chapter 2. First Steps into Valwind. Elias stepped off the mountain trail and onto a cobblestone street that wound gently between the houses. The air smelled of firewood, melted snow, and something sweet, like warm honey drifting from an open kitchen window. People moved slowly here, not tired, but peaceful, as if the world outside the mountains simply didn't exist. A woman in a thick wool sweater swept snow from her steps. An elderly man carried a basket filled with herbs. A group of children chased each other through the snow, laughing softly so as not to disturb the quiet. Elias noticed something strange. Every lantern he passed, hanging from porches, doorways, even the corners of buildings, glowed with a steady, warm flame. Not a single one flickered, not even in the winter wind. He stopped near a wooden post where a particularly ornate lantern was mounted. Its glass was etched with small symbols, not runes, not letters, more like swirling patterns that seemed to move when he wasn't directly looking at them. He leaned closer. "It won't bite," a voice behind him said. Elias turned. A girl around his age stood there, wrapped in a thick coat and scarf, a woven basket on her arm. Her hair was dark, her cheeks flushed from the cold, and her eyes held a curious glimmer. "I'm Lena," she said. "You're not from around here." "Is it that obvious?" Elias asked. "Only people who've never seen a Valwind lantern stare at them like they're about to sprout wings." He smiled. "I'm Elias. I'm a map maker." Lena raised an eyebrow. "Map maker? Well, you won't have much luck drawing this place." "Why not?" She leaned in slightly and whispered. "Because the village doesn't stay still." Chapter 3. The Inn of the Everlight. Lena led Elias toward a large wooden building near the center of the village, the Inn of the Everlight. A massive lantern, the largest he'd seen so far, hung above the entrance, its flame glowing brighter than the others. The carved wooden sign swayed gently. Inside, the inn was warm, filled with soft chatter and the familiar, comforting smell of burning pine. A fireplace crackled on the far wall. People sat at tables made of dark mountain oak. A burly man with a thick beard looked up from behind the counter. "New traveler?" he grumbled. "Found him staring at the lanterns," Lena said. "Ah," the man chuckled. "That happens." "I'm Elias," he said, taking a seat. "I came to study your village, and maybe to find out why it's not on any map." The innkeeper leaned forward. "I'm Bram, and Valawind was never meant to be on a map." "Why not?" "Because this village is protected by the mountain and by something older than the mountain." Elias felt a shiver, not of fear, but of curiosity. Lena placed her basket on the table. "If you stay the night, you'll understand." "Understand what?" Elias asked. "That Valawind doesn't stay in the same place for long." Chapter 4. The Midnight Shift. Elias stayed in a small guest room upstairs. The walls were wooden, the bed warm, and the window looked out over the rooftops and snowy mountains. Exhausted from his journey, he fell asleep quickly, but some time past midnight, he awoke, not from a sound, not from a dream, from movement. The house was moving. Elias shot upright. He rushed to the window and stared into the night. The rooftops, lanterns, streets, everything shifted as if the entire village was gliding slowly across the mountainside, though the ground remained perfectly still beneath his feet. But it wasn't random. It wasn't chaotic. It was intentional, as if something was guiding it. A low hum resonated through the air, almost musical. The lanterns outside glowed brighter, pulsing softly in perfect rhythm. Then, just as slowly as it began, the movement stopped. A distant echo bounced off the mountains. A whisper of wind brushed the window, and the village settled. Elias couldn't breathe for a moment. The village moved, just like Lena had said. But why? And how? Chapter 5. The Legend of the Lanterns. The next morning, he rushed downstairs. Lena was waiting for him, sipping something warm. "You felt it, didn't you?" "The whole village moved," Elias said. "What is this place?" Bram joined them, placing a bowl of steaming stew in front of Elias. "There's a story," Bram said, sitting across from him. "A legend passed down long before any of us were born." Elias leaned forward. "Hundreds of years ago, travelers crossed these mountains and built a settlement," Bram began. "But the mountains were harsh. Winters were deadly. Storms destroyed homes. Many villages were lost. One night, a traveler arrived, a woman in a blue cloak, carrying a lantern that never went out. She warned the villagers that the mountain was waking and that something ancient and dangerous would soon rise." "What kind of danger?" Elias asked. "No one knows for sure. Some say it was a creature. Others say it was the mountain itself, alive in a way we cannot understand." Lena took over the story. "The woman gave the villagers her lantern and taught them how to craft their own. Lanterns that would guide and protect them. Lanterns that glowed with an eternal flame. And under her guidance," Bram said, "the village gained the ability to shift through the mountains, to move away from storms, away from avalanches, away from whatever danger was coming." Elias stared at the lantern on the wall. "That's how Valawind survived," Bram finished. "And how we still survive." Lena leaned closer. "And why cartographers never find us." Chapter 6. The Frozen River. Elias spent the rest of the day walking through the village. He sketched rooftops, lantern designs, symbols carved in doorways. but the villagers always smiled knowingly as he passed, as if they knew he couldn't truly capture their home on paper. Lena eventually joined him and guided him toward the edge of the village, where a narrow wooden bridge crossed a partially frozen river. The surface of the water was strange, smooth as glass, no current, no ripples. "Why is it so still?" Elias asked. "Because the river isn't water," Lena said. Elias frowned. "What do you mean?" She crouched and touched the surface with a gloved hand. The water didn't react. No movement, no cold, nothing. "It's memory," she said. "Memory?" Elias repeated. "This river holds the memory of every place Valawind has ever been. When the village moves, the river records it. Every mountain pass, every valley, every winter storm. It remembers." Elias stared in awe. "And if you listen," she continued, "sometimes it speaks." He leaned closer, and for the first time he heard it. Whispers, echoes, soft voices drifting through the cold air. Places, names, moments, as though the river held centuries of stories within its frozen surface. Elias felt his heart beat faster. "This village," whispered. "It's special." Lena smiled faintly. "Valawind chooses who gets to see it." Chapter 7. A Warning in the Wind. That evening, the sky turned an unusual shade of violet. Clouds gathered low over the peaks. Bram stepped outside, staring upward with a worried expression. Several villagers stopped their tasks, glancing toward the horizon. "What's happening?" Elias asked. Bram answered grimly. "The mountain is shifting." Lena grabbed Elias's sleeve. "That's not good. When the mountain shifts, the village must shift too." "But you moved last night," Elias said. "Sometimes once isn't enough," Bram replied. A resonant, thunderous groan rolled across the valley. The ground trembled, only slightly, but enough to send snow sliding from rooftops. Villagers hurried into the streets. Lanterns flickered brightly, then steadied. Elias felt the energy in the air change, as if the mountain itself had opened its eyes. "What do we do?" Elias asked. "We prepare," Lena said, "and you stay close." Chapter 8. The awakening of the peak's night fell quickly. The lanterns glowed brighter than ever, illuminating the snow-covered village with warm light. Elias stood in the center with Lena as Bram and other villagers checked each lantern, whispering incantations under their breath. A deep rumble echoed through the valley. Then another. The mountain roared like an ancient creature waking from a long sleep. A gust of icy air swept down from the peak, making the lantern flames flare. "What is happening?" Elias asked over the noise. Lena looked at him, fear in her eyes for the first time. "The thing my grandmother told me stories about," she said softly. "The thing the blue-cloaked woman warned our ancestors about." From the darkness above, huge cracks of light formed in the snow on the mountain's highest ridge. It glowed faintly, pulsating like a heartbeat. "The mountain is alive," Lena whispered, "and it's waking up." Chapter 9. The Lantern Ceremony. Villagers gathered in the square. Bram carried the great lantern from the inn, the Everlight. Its flame burned brighter and stronger than all the others. Lena handed Elias a smaller lantern. "You're part of this now," she said, "whether you meant to be or not." "What do I do?" he asked. "Hold it and trust it." The lantern warmed his hands. The flame inside swirled gently, almost like it was aware of him. Bram raised the Everlight high. "Valawind," he shouted. "Prepare to move." The villagers lifted their lanterns. The flames synchronized, pulsing in powerful waves. The ground began to hum. The village trembled. Elias felt the lantern in his hands vibrate. Chapter 10. The Great Shift. And then the world moved. Not like last night, not slowly, not gracefully. This time, the village surged forward across the mountainside as if pulled by invisible threads. Lantern light streaked across the snow. Houses shuddered. Wind roared around them. Elias clutched the lantern tightly as the ground beneath him glided across the slope, dodging cliffs and weaving around jagged rocks with impossible precision. The village wasn't just moving, it was fleeing. Above, cracks of light burst open across the mountain peak, revealing something massive beneath the snow, something ancient and breathing. Lena's voice cut through the chaos. "Don't let go of the lantern. It protects us." Suddenly, the Everlight's flame shot upward like a beacon. A wave of warm light cascaded outward, forming a barrier around the entire village. The mountain roared again, louder this time. A blinding flash erupted from its peak. And then everything went silent. The ground settled. The lanterns dimmed to a soft glow. The wind calmed. The village had stopped. Chapter 11. A new valley. When Elias opened his eyes, the village was standing in a completely different place. The mountains around them were unfamiliar, taller, darker, untouched by human paths. Snow fell gently from the quiet sky. The villagers lowered their lanterns, relief filling their faces. "We made it," Bram said. Lena exhaled shakily. "The mountain sleeps again." Elias turned slowly, taking in the new landscape. "So this is what Valawind does," he whispered. "It survives," Lena nodded. "And now you're part of that survival." Elias looked at the lantern in his hands, and he knew he wouldn't be leaving. Not yet, maybe not ever. There were still maps to be drawn, stories to uncover, mysteries to understand, and somewhere deep in the mountain range, the ancient danger still slept. For now. Chapter 12. The cartographer of Valawind weeks passed. Elias remained in Valewind, studying the lanterns, learning from Lena, drawing new maps of each valley the village moved through. He became the first cartographer in history to map a village that refused to stand still. But more importantly, he found a second home. A peaceful mountain village where lanterns glowed through endless winter nights, where the river carried memories, where legends walked in the snow, and where the mountains whispered stories yet to be told.